Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. It's my distinguished pleasure to have Ryan Schwartz with us here today, CEO, founder of RYCA International, revolutionizing oral teeth care. I've learned so much about how I brush incorrectly when learning about RYCA, its products, and we're going to get to discuss the creation of RYCA, the products, the company, here with Ryan today. Ryan, thanks for taking the time to join the podcast.
Of course, man. It's great being here. Appreciate the passion for oral care. Not everybody shares that.
It's true. You know, you get this pain of, I need to go to the dentist and they're going to tell me I'm doing something wrong. They recommended an electronic toothbrush for me. I try to stick there for 2 minutes. I know we're going to talk about 2 minutes and what your product allows for, but it's one of those things that I know I always feel I'm doing wrong or I'm missing spots. Something can be better.
That's right. You know, it's funny you mentioned pain and a dentist. Part of my story is that when I think of dentistry, I don't think about pain because my dad, I say was because he's retired, but my dad was a famous Beverly Hills dentist. Still with us, thank God, but I've been retired for about 10 years. And his dental office in Beverly Hills was the center of life. I would just spend days there hanging out. You wouldn't think a dental office is fun to hang out in, but it was fun because there's always celebrities, but more so he was just a dentist that everybody loved. So it was just a great place to be around. And we'll get to my background of how I became the CEO of an oral care company. And of course, my dad being a dentist has something to do with that. But really, I was a LA kid, born and raised. Jason and I live very close to each other to this day. Went to UC Berkeley for undergrad and then USC Film School. Film was always my dream. And so it's an interesting path. And I'm sure so many people have this in common of thinking you're going to do one thing, taking everything you learn from that trait, and then you get an idea. And if it resonates with you, you go, F it, let's do this. And so, obviously, if my dad wasn't a dentist, we're probably not having the same conversation. I probably don't pursue this kind of oral care path. But when I think of dentistry, I don't have that same pain associated with it. I think of kind of an excitement. And so that brought us to RYCA.
One of the few. I like it. And
exactly. It also, I should say, gave us a great life because my dad, everybody loves my dad, and I don't want to brag about him too much, but so his patients were comping him. We were always, comped in Vegas, comped in Mexico, and just people loved hanging out with him. So dentistry provided a very exciting life for us. I should also say that it didn't hurt that Denzel Washington and Elizabeth Taylor wrote my letters of recommendation for USC Film School. So it's nice to have a Beverly Hills dentist to the stars as your dad.
There you go. It's all about who you know, they say. And even just to have that environment growing up, I imagine was very inspiring. And down your path, Berkeley, USC. And what brought you into this world of oral care? I know we've talked about growing up, but you had a successful career before this. What made you say, hey, this is where I'm putting my time. This is where I want my impact to be?
Yeah. Great question and very clear answer, which was getting ready for my wedding. And I'll tell you why. First of all, as a filmmaker, writer, producer, director, you're very entrepreneurial. It's one thing that we should talk about a little bit is the similarities between trying to get a movie off the ground and trying to get a product off the ground. There's so much similarity, and probably people in your audience might be more interested in getting a movie off the ground than a product. So we'll talk about both. But because you're entrepreneurial as a filmmaker, you're always, I was a mortgage broker to help pay the bills. I've done so many other things. And getting my teeth whitened, my dad was still practicing at the time, and I'm sure your audience has gotten their teeth whitened, but they build you a custom tray. And I literally was getting my teeth whitened to look nicer in my wedding photos. And I am the audience. I've never brushed for the full 2 minutes. You mentioned that you don't brush for the full 2 minutes. And I just had this thought, what if this darn thing was bristled and you could brush all of your mouth at one time or half of your mouth at one time? I hadn't thought about what the final ideation would be, but the cliche, there's got to be a better way because who the heck is brushing for the full 2 minutes? Right. And I should say, Jason, we've been working on this so long, and we could talk about why it's taken us a while. It takes time to get this right. It was a real engineering kind of challenge. But the reason I bring up the timeline is because I had this idea before there were competitors. Now people may have heard of some of these kind of half mouth and full mouth brushes. And I have to say, those brushes aren't really doing me any favors because while I appreciate the effort to solve a problem, no disrespect to these founders, but so far those solutions have been kind of deemed inefficient and maybe even a little gimmicky. And basically dentists are basically saying, stay away from those products. Don't, shift from your traditional brushes. And so in a way, that's an opportunity for us because we are a real, just, you had mentioned it, but guys, just so you know, we have invented a truly reliable 30-second toothbrush where you're seeing those competitors out there, but ours is tested and works. So anyway, whitening my teeth, I'm like, what if we could brush faster? And I just called my dad. I was home. I called him. I said, Dad, I don't know if it's possible, but would it be helpful, in not to use cliche terms, but would it be helpful in the marketplace if there was a brush that did what we take 2 minutes to do in 10 seconds or 15 seconds or 30 seconds? And immediately he was like, well, absolutely, because, and not to bore everybody, but the biggest problem with oral care is not the brushes themselves, it's that we're not using them properly, right? It kind of sprinkled into our DNA at RYCA is all these other traditional brushes are basically asking you to change who you are. Hey, Jason, even though you've never brushed for 2 minutes, let me give you a timer that's going to go off every 30 seconds. And then you move it to this quadrant, then you move it to this quadrant, and you move, and that'll help you brush for 2 minutes, which of course it does not. Or I got an idea. Let me give you a connected app so that you already don't love brushing your teeth, but now you're going to pull your phone out while you're brushing your teeth and try to Wi-Fi sync to your phone. And it's going to show you when you're missing. And at RYCA, we just think, what are we doing? Why not just invent something that really embraces the behavior of the consumer? We're busier than ever. None of us are actually, the average person brushes for 45 seconds. So our kind of philosophy is until or unless you provide a solution that does the job in the time people actually have, all these poor oral care and overall health problems are going to exist. So anyway, had the idea when I stuck this thing in my mouth, and my dad was like, it would be great. And to be candid, and I think your audience will relate to this, I didn't know the first thing about consumer products. I knew how to get a product to market in film, but I didn't know the first thing about manufacturing, tooling, building a team, regulations, clinicals, any of that stuff. But what was inspiring is I knew this idea was relevant. I knew this, it was one of those, like, why did I switch? Because I couldn't get away from the fact that not only on a business side is there a market for this, but I knew I needed it. I now know that Jason needs it. And then when you talk about our why, I really started thinking about, well, for guys like you and me, it would be convenient to have a 30-second option, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's a whole group of communities that they need a faster option, whether they're elderly, disabled, injured, kids. I'm a parent of 13-year-old twin boys. No chance are they brushing for 2 minutes, right? So they use Encompass, thank God. And I'm probably the only dad that has their kids getting good oral care because I've given them a 30-second solution, right? So as I started thinking about the value that I don't mean to sound cliche, although I am a pretty hard on my sleeve type of guy. I actually think part of this tattoo is a heart. Yeah, right there. I don't even know what's on it, but yeah. So I'm literally
on
the
sleeve.
I didn't mean to put it. I didn't mean to do that pun that's how tattoos are. You don't think about it till after, but I am a lead by my heart founder and CEO. I'm the same way as a filmmaker and as a parent. Just because this is so conversational, I'll get philosophical on you. I mentioned I went to UC Berkeley. I studied peace and conflict studies because I always knew I was going to go to film school. And I was like, I'm just going to kind of take an easy, interesting major, peace and conflict studies. And of course, we studied MLK and Gandhi. And my favorite Gandhi quote of all time, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but of power, there are two kinds. One arises from fear of punishment and the other from acts of love. And that is my philosophy as a parent, as a CEO, as a filmmaker. You hear about directors who, people are scared of them on set. Oh my God, and so anyway, RYCA has that spirit that we lead with a lot of heart. And we're really kind of moved by the fact that our brush has purpose. It's not just, it's great that it's going to clean faster, easier, simpler, but we're really excited about the purpose that it has. So all of these things were kind of stewing as my dad and I started looking into what it would take. And he's my co-founder, although he's kind of taken a back seat in golfing and fishing these days. He's 82 years old. Good for him. Yeah, exactly. Well, what would it really take to do this? Literally our first thing was calling an IP attorney and doing a patent search. Like, am I the first guy to have this idea? And crazy, Jason, at the time, there were 2 patents and they were from like the 60s and 70s. And you saw these amazing kind of Frankensteinian things of these gears that would brush. Now there are thousands, and so that's just in the last, less than a decade.
But you said they're somewhat gimmicky. They don't have the same feedback that you're getting from the oral care community.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm very proud. It's confidential, but the biggest arguably one of two biggest oral care companies in the space, is our largest investor. And so when we talk about traction, the crowd has been our foundation. We kind of launched as a company in 2019 on Indiegogo, prototype, disclosed, hey, we're only at a prototype stage, guys. We're still in development. And we were fortunate enough to do almost $500,000 in sales in 3 months. And, your audience, I know that I just think crowdfunding is so cool because it's literally people putting their money where their mouth is. And in my case, it's very little. They're putting their money on a better toothbrush, right? But it's people saying, hey, listen, I know you don't have the product yet, but I'm going to give you $125 because this is a product I would love to see on the market. And yeah, I got to wait however long. I mean, that's the spirit of crowdfunding that I just think is so cool that a lot of people don't get. It's literally the crowd. Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir, of course, but like supporting these startups by saying, hey, you're not there yet, but let me give you a little support. And so on Indiegogo, we sold 4,500 brushes and started to build an audience of not just, to use the catchphrases, early adopters, but true supporters who, when I deliver the brush, I'll tell you the story of why we haven't delivered yet, but we're soon, which we can't wait. We've got our foundation, and so that's 4,500 backers on Indiegogo. And then we turned to equity crowdfunding on Start Engine in 2020 and oversubscribed the round. And I will share, we'll talk a little bit about how I did that because I spent very little in advertising, although now I am with a great company called DNA. But at the time, I did not. And so we'll talk about some of those things that kind of caught fire for me.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about an addressable market. Everyone needs to brush their teeth, whether they do or not. And like you said, just the time for the act itself, let alone to do it right, 2 minutes. I got the little thing buzzing. I mean, you guys have it down to 30 seconds, the J-shaped brush. You know it's doing what it needs to in each nook and cranny, which is huge. And the audience is responding with the pre-orders, the backers, the investors. Over 6,000 people have said, yes, we want this. Let's bring this into existence. I imagine it's the same thing you're seeing. I know you have testimonials from dentists and all different types of professionals and industry experts. So it just seems like something that the audience is welcoming.
Yeah. So, what separates us from some of these, and I don't want to be disparaging about really well-intended founders and CEOs that started their own companies, and I wish them the best of luck on these kind of half-mouth solutions. But just a couple of things that make us different. One, and going back to my filmmaking roots, I used to teach film as well, so sometimes I have these kind of expressions in my back pocket. But the reality is, making a great film is not a mystery. The only way to make a great film is to hire great people, right? And that's the spirit that I took into founding and starting and building RYCA. So when we thought, how are we going to build a toothbrush that's literally going to change oral care? To use a filmmaking analogy, the only way you could do that is to bring in the best director, the best cinematographer, the best writers, right? And so it took a lot of work, but I hired the former director of engineering for Sonicare and Clarisonic. So kind of like hiring Spielberg, so in a film analogy, we built the company based on expertise. Right. And so that was the first difference. All credit to what these guys are doing. I promise they don't have the director of engineering for Sonicare building these half-mouth brushes. Right. They saw an opportunity and a market need, which I applaud that. Like, God, there should be a simpler solution. And then, of course, tried to create a solution. But this is particularly because we're a one size fits all, and your size mouth is different than my size mouth, which is different than both of our wives, which is different than different ethnicities. And so we had to painstakingly do the math on geometry, on size, on width, on tooth width. We had to build in adjustability features into the brush so that it works on your mouth and my mouth. But the fun thing about our geometry, because it's essentially a tray, that's why they call them mouth pieces, right? Mouth. So the advantage that I have is I know what bristles need to do what jobs. Right. And that gets really exciting because on a toothbrush, all your bristles are doing all the jobs. Right. But in our geometry, I know what bristles, for example, and this is very dorky, but are going to be massaging your gums. So I'm going to assign different characteristics to that nylon filament than I am to the ones that are brushing interproximally, meaning getting in there between your teeth and making sure, if you don't floss well, that you're still okay. To also the ones that are going to be cleaning the crowns of your teeth. So our bristle field, we call it, is it's like a beautiful piece of science and engineering in itself, because we know what the bristles' jobs are. And so we can kind of arm them to do the right jobs. And so I guess nobody is thinking about this whole mouth clean as much as our team, not just cleaning the whole mouth, but how do we get to the back of the back molar? In the dental space, that's like the holy grail. Like, I don't want to just clean all your teeth. I want to make sure that I'm not missing any spots in cleaning the back of the back molar. So we actually have what we call like a diving board at the end of our brush head that does clean the back of your back molar. So anyway, started with just hiring the best people and then knowing that we were going to take the time to get it right. Some of these people had the idea way after me and launched way before me. And you kind of got to ask them, well, how'd they get to market so soon? Right. But unfortunately, those solutions aren't catching fire. There's a reason that we've kind of heard about these alternative brushes, but you don't have one on your countertop and I don't have one on my countertop because they're not the way yet. Right. They're just kind of this interesting alternative. We have ambitions of being kind of the new gold standard. Anyway, enough about that. We have high ambitions about what Encompass and our brush can do.
Sure. It's hard to trust something that doesn't have the recommendations behind it, the type of testimonials you guys have from industry experts or, my dentist, which I started going to in preparation of my wedding and got my teeth whitening process, told me to get. But it's all about the team, like you said. And I love the film analogy of, great films require great people. And I hope your team knows. I hope, director of engineering at Sonicare knows you refer to him as Steven Spielberg. I hope he tells his friends and family that. But it's all about the team. You've created the product. What else has been instrumental in the development of the company to be able to take Encompass to life?
Yeah, it's really kind of learning. There's so much you don't know, right? We were a small company. I could imagine, okay, if we're going to build this thing, let's get great builders, great engineers. But then I had to learn about, well, what about regulatory? What about safety? What about compliance? What about packaging? What about 3PLs and how are we going to sell it? And how does Amazon work? And are we going to go direct to consumer? How do you get into retail space? So that was basically just acknowledging what I don't know, which was a ton in consumer products, and then building out my team to fill those gaps. So my COO, Summer Harif, I'm very proud, is a regulatory, they used to call her kind of like regulatory 911. If you had a product that you wanted to get through the FDA, she was your phone call. And so now we know all the regulatory hurdles. We know the different regulations in the US versus Canada versus, and that's going to affect our rollout, right? We don't want to roll out too ambitiously because there's all sorts of work to do on the back end before you're ready to go to, for example, Canada, because Canada deems a toothbrush a class 2 device instead of America that deems a toothbrush a class 1 device. And did this guy know any of that before I started? Of course not, right? And then, of course, sales and marketing is fun. And that is, where I do feel like my background is pretty well suited because all this is storytelling at the end of the day, and so I'm proud that my kind of passion for the why is part of our story. And, I'm even imagining one of the coolest things to see in this process is when we first started doing user studies. So it was great to show dentists and build our dental advisory board. And we've been in touch with the North American Dental Association, and it's going to be a big play. And it's also great to see their endorsement because they were so skeptical of some of these earlier solutions, right? But the most exciting part, and it's very similar to your first screening of a film, and sorry about all the film analogies, is we did independent user studies. So randomly recruited, no horse in the race. These people didn't owe us anything. The clinician prefaced each one by saying, we want the brutal, honest truth, which I was like, God, I don't want the brutal, honest truth. I don't want
to throw the word brutal in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so cinematic because we're behind two-way glass, like right out of the movies. Like there they are with the clinician. Our prototype was tethered, which means we didn't have the firmware and the PCB. So, it's clunky. It's got a tether hanging out to a power source where a clinician hits the power for them. And this was with our strategic partner, who's our large investor. And of course, you want these user studies to go well, but they're seeing a completely new way to brush for the first time. And our brush head, and we could share an image of it, is a little larger than you'd expect because it has to brush half your mouth at one time, of course, right? So people would go, oh, that's bigger than I expect. But we also presented a concept card, and they were really intrigued by the idea of 30-second brushing and whole mouth clean. So there was an open-mindedness to a new way of trying something. But then person after person, we kind of first turn it on, first put it in your mouth without turning it on, just to get the sense of it. Then, okay, next time we're going to go. And just to watch them brush we call it kind of moments of trial and delight, to watch their kind of eyes light up like, oh my God, this is this. And the brush automatically turns off after 15 seconds. So you power it on one touch. Our whole philosophy is let us do all the work for you. You don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think about the right pressure, the right angle. Just turn the brush on and let the brush do the work. And so the 15-second cycle would come off and they were like, that's it? Half my mouth is clean? Yep. Flip it over to the other side. And then of course, the clinician would say, well, tell us what you think. And that was really exciting because people just loved it. So I'm now imagining from a marketing perspective, well, wait till we finally do our release, right? Right till we get this to 6,000 backers who are going to be the first ones to get the brush, right? Then everyone wants to be viral. But the idea of viral is not how many clicks a video has. The idea of viral is there's something to share, right? And so whether it's a mom reaching out to another mom, like, oh my God, you've got to get this for little Johnny because I know your kid doesn't brush his teeth, and on and on and on. So we just kind of saw people's minds be blown, and then you can extrapolate. Oh, this is going to be really exciting when we finally launch. So can't wait for that part. And then the cheesy part of me is I imagine a viral ad campaign that's not just about time. We have an ad up running right now that shows my partner's 13-year-old daughter with braces brushing for 30 seconds compared to her best friend, so two 13-year-olds, and the best friend brushing for 2 minutes. And it is staggering to watch how long 2 minutes. And of course, I'm filling the time with stats and stuff like that. But that 2-minute brushing is crazy long. And then she comes in and she does her job in 30 seconds. And it's kind of mind blowing. But, I'm imagining an ad campaign that's not just about the time savings, but just kind of fun, emotional things. Like we're literally gifting everybody 90 seconds twice a day, right? So in the morning, Jason, how are you going to use that 90 seconds? Is it just to savor that sip of coffee just a little bit more? Is it to kiss your wife a little bit more before you go to bed? Is it to give your son a hug before he goes to school? It's a gift, right? 90 seconds. Again, we get the better oral care in 30 seconds. So you're not depriving yourself of oral care, but you're just gifting yourself 90 seconds. As you can see, I'm excited about all this stuff.
No, I could feel the passion. I felt like I was right along there with you in the story. I was behind the glass, and to get that type of feedback, that's what you're looking for. And I'm sure you guys had some meaningful notes you're able to apply to the product, and that's why you were able to get it to the point it's at today.
That's right.
And the fact that it's to that level is huge. Now, you've talked about the success for crowdfunding and being able to reach out to future customers and later to investors. And I should mention and emphasize to the audience, you're in the top percentiles of equity crowdfunding issuers. Of all the deals out there, you're in the top few percent that have oversubscribed. I mean, that says something in a loud way. And for someone who works on these campaigns day in, day out, very few get that type of response from the audience. That same type of feedback you got from the studies, you're getting from investors, you got from backers. What has allowed you to be successful there in terms of telling the story, bringing the audience, and getting them to act?
Yeah. So the first one I get to take no credit for. It's exactly what you said. Everybody brushes their teeth, right? Mm-hmm. So talk about an addressable market. That's the first thing, is that everybody is like, hey, I would love an easier way to brush. Maybe what I could take a little bit of credit for is I hope people see an authenticity to what we're trying to do, right? That this wasn't led first by, this is a cash grab. Let me figure out how I can make money. Because the truth is we've worked way harder than I expected because I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning, right? So I think people maybe, if not a full belief, have a suspicion that our heart's in the right place and that this is a group of good people trying to bring a worthy product to the market, right? And everyone in your audience will know when you are doing crowdfunding, you tend to be the face of the brand. You almost have to be. So people are investing in as much as you as the product, right? Or I should say, a great product is helpful, but it's going to need the right voice and the right author. And that sounds ridiculously arrogant, because if someone were to rewind that, it might sound like I'm saying I'm the reason we did well. And
it follows best practices. And you highlighted your team. We understand it. It's not just you. It's the people behind the product that those are investing in or backing and saying, yep, they're going to take this to market. There's other crowdfunding products. We don't know if they're actually going to do what they're saying, but we believe in Ryan. We believe in the team.
One very specific example. So as wonderful as our story is, we've got our pitfalls and ups and downs too. And probably our biggest break also had some unintended consequences. So I mentioned that 2019, very successful campaign. And just to give your audience a sense of the stakes, in 2019, I promised a brush in 2021. We are sitting here about to be 2025, right? And I will tell you that with every fiber of my being, I was planning on delivering a brush in 2021, right? So what happened? 2019, great pre-order campaign on Indiegogo. 2020, raised the capital we need to then start delivering. End of 2020, phone call, unexpected, from a leading player in oral care, right? And so this was an interesting moment. At millionth film example, we were a cool, tiny, scrappy little independent movie, very agile, working on a little budget, making something cool, going to put it out in the market real fast. Got a call from Giant Studio. Love what you're doing. Let's do what you're doing, but the studio version, meaning slower, right? A lot more money. The brush definitely elevated, right? Because it was their resources that I was able to do user studies to iterate. And Jason, you were so right. We didn't just do one user study after the other. We learned so much from them, made so many improvements, then brought back the next group of user studies to make sure we were trending in the right direction. One time we even brought back the same people to make sure that any pain points they had, we'd solved, right? But all that comes with my major studio funding, right? But it also meant they were not going to be ready to deliver the brush when I wanted to deliver the brush. So I had to go to our Start Engine Indiegogo community and a little bit with my head between my legs, just saying, hey guys, it's going to take a little longer than we thought. But the one thing that I'm very proud of, to give your audience a specific example, from the moment I made that announcement, I said, if your patience is run dry, we will refund every single request. And I think to this day, we're probably the only company that still, because keep in mind, these guys came on board in 2019 and finally we're on track to deliver next year, which is great. But I have kept the vast majority of our community together with some humility. And of course, saying, hey guys, if you're out, of course, never going to be a problem. Here's your money back. Right. And so what's kind of cool about that is I would say we've probably lost 3 to 5% of that initial 4,000 backers, but the rest they're probably a little fed up with the timeline, but they also are like, hey, I'm in this thing and Ryan has been nuts and at least keeping us posted and we're seeing this through. So it's kind of an interesting mixed bag there.
They could feel the energy. They see the commitment. They know they're, on this ride with you, and you're getting to the destination.
It was much more of a ride than they probably expected, and they're hearing all my heartfelt stuff all the time too. I'm not a typical, buttoned up. They're hearing all this stuff. They're probably like, "Oh my God, I've heard more from Ryan than I ever need to."
But I think the transparency goes a long way. And the same way you said, it's important to see the face. It's important to see what the individual's character is and what happens during those obstacles really defines who that leader is behind the wheel. So I think it resonated with them and stood out. I could tell you that's not the case with all groups that don't deliver on time on an Indiegogo or Kickstarter campaign. I could tell you we've had to work on reputation management and seen, comments that were negative. But if you're in communication and doing so in an authentic way, which you said was part of the idea behind it, it lands. And the fact that you said, hey, we'll refund this goes even further. Yeah. And they still have that need of, hey, I want to brush my teeth quicker, better. It's more than just a minute and a half to me. It's 25% of the time. Hey, 30 seconds versus 2 minutes. It may sound like a small little blip, but I can tell you when I'm tired and I'm, wandering back from watching a movie, that's my film reference, watching a movie with my wife on the couch and it's time to get ready for bed. 30 seconds sounds great to me. But you were successful at this. Few have been. What would you recommend for audiences that are listening in and running their own crowdfunding campaign or even just starting their own brand? What should they test out towards their own success?
Sure. And I've had 3 now crowdfunding experience and I've learned from all of them. And it's probably more illuminating to share things that didn't go well. Okay. So the first of all, just the value of the crowd, which I think your audience understands, but it is a way of getting market validation before you spend so much money on, a lot of people are like, I think I have a great product. I'm going to do all the product development cost millions, and then I'm going to see if there's a market for it. Right. And then they go, whoops, miscalculation. There doesn't appear to be a market for it. The genius of the crowd depending on how far along you are, you can show it the prototype, you can show it the concept, and you're basically saying, hey guys, if I can execute this, would this be something that you're interested in? And so getting to that market validation quickly is so smart. In the film business, they try to do that with scripts. Like, I think this script would be good. Let's go make it. But of course, things get lost in translation. The script isn't the same. What's really interesting about that crowd route. Hold on, I just lost my train of thought on the film thing. Anyway, so
you're getting that validation back. So from the crowd,
yeah.
you're able to see what's actually landing.
That's right. Oh, I know exactly. There is a misnomer that, and this is the same in any marketing, and Jason, you know this better than anyone, that if your idea is good enough, you could just build a page on Indiegogo and it's going to catch fire. Luckily, I heeded this advice, but you've got to put the work in to building an audience, whether you're starting your campaign or launching a product. And there's just no magic bullet to how, it doesn't matter how great your idea is. And even if it obviously it's helpful if your idea has built-in communities, right? If you have something for pets, there's a lot of pet communities on social media and maybe you can tap in. But at the end of the day, what we found when we decided to do it, so we launched our Indiegogo in 2019, and luckily someone said, if you're going to do it, you got to invest in your own campaign. And I mean, invest in dollars, but I also just mean in time. You got to build that email list. And so that the steps that we took, and I hadn't met DNA and Jason at the time. So we went with a different company that worked out great. But was building an email list by building a landing page before we launched, and then building ads that showed that we were going to be coming live in, say, 30 days on Indiegogo, and building interest in that. So if you're interested in a discount or early fees, all the different kind of incentives you can have, sign up on our email list, right? And we were fortunate enough, and it was staggering, you're going to be shocked about this number, that we had 40,000 people on our email list in our first month. And why is that important? Because all these crowd things are all about momentum and traction, right? So just to give your audience a number at the time, and this was 2019, we spent 45 grand on our kind of awareness, which was to say the ads, building the landing page, a month of running the ads, MailChimp to make sure that we're capturing all the ads and then sending the emails and, just that whole thing. But what that translated to is on day one, we hit our goal, right? So we on Indiegogo, and people are like, oh my God, Ryan, how did everyone know about your campaign? Well, because we did the work.
Yep.
It wasn't just a magic, oh, what a cool page. Like everybody wants a toothbrush. No, we built that awareness, right? But that led to that 45,000 plus ad spend to drive the campaign, led to $500,000 in sales, right? And then got us, and that led to our success at Start Engine. So the simple, obvious thing is that you got to do the work, and probably going to have to invest some money. I wish there was, everybody thinks, well, we'll just do viral videos and then we'll get a ton of exposure for free. I haven't figured that out yet. I mean, obviously, once you are launching a brand, of course, the influencer market is important, but that's going to cost you money too. So yeah, it was really being humble and knowing that you got to do the work to get the returns on crowdfunding. Now, when I went to Start Engine after, we didn't need to, at the time, to raise the whole 1.1. At the time, the Reg CF limit was 1.1, so we just raised 1.1. Now the Reg CF limit is 5 million as long as you do a full financial audit. But we're just going to raise what we're going to raise. I was already feeling rich at the time, having just did 450,000 in pre-orders. Yeah. So with Start Engine, their structure was different then, but I said, guys, I don't want to spend money on advertising. We have an audience of that same 40,000. And so real quick things that happened on Start Engine that I think are kind of instructive. They used to manage a little ad buy, and they said, can we do a small ad buy? I said, sure. $18,000. That's it for my whole $1.1 million round. I spent $18,000 in ads total. However, that wasn't the success. So on Start Engine, so we had just closed the Indiegogo campaign. We're going to Start Engine, and I did the same kind of grassroots building. That's me and my whole team emailing everybody. Hey guys, you've always, and every entrepreneur will relate to this, but you've been so supportive of me in the past. I know I'm always asking you for all these things. but this journey is still continuing. No problem if you can't. But if you can help, timing matters. And what really matters is showing momentum on day one. So I'm going to be launching yet another crowdfunding campaign on whatever the date was. Let's call it December 1st, 2020. And so if you're willing to help yet again, so you got to have a lot of grace and humility and be willing to ask, right? But if you're willing to help, I'd love you to be a part of that first day momentum. And so sure enough, we did. I think we did 45,000 on our first day back in 2020. And that was all friends, family. And of course, I'm updating Indiegogo people. Hey guys, not only can you buy a brush, but now you can own a piece of the company on Start Engine. And there was all this excitement. And then we did a little bit of ads. And I will say it got to us to about 150, 175. And then things slowed down a tiny bit. And I didn't want to do more ads because I just didn't want to do more ads at the time. And then, and this is really relevant, Start Engine called and said, hey, you might have an opportunity. These are basically deal flow companies, right? But at the time it was free. Now you have to pay for deal flow opportunities. But there was a guy named Neil Patel. You guys could Google him, and he had a high net worth angel network called Angels and Entrepreneurs, A&E. Yep. And so it was so funny. He's like, hey, listen, Neil doesn't ask if he wants to meet you. Great. So you meet this wild guy named Neil. And essentially, if he likes the thing, he's curating deals for his audience, right? Nothing new. But so him and I hit it off. He's like you, Jason. He's got a real passion for oral care. He's like, I'm always looking for an easier way to brush my teeth. So I kind of made that hurdle. And so then I got put into what's called the hot seat. So it's basically like this. Neil and I do a taped Zoom for an hour, and his audience can watch it live or watch it whenever it's on. It's kind of posted on their Angels and Entrepreneurs network. And it costs me nothing, right? I think Neil now charges $5,000-$10,000. If that's a different business model. And that when Started and said it, they're like, hey, this could be a real opportunity for you. And that was fuel on the fire. We went from 100 to 200 to 300 to 4. And all of a sudden now, of course, your best audience are the people who invested, right? So if I just invested in some cool thing and I'm at a dinner party, I'm like, hey, dude, I just invested in this thing. You got to check it out. So now you've got, so we had 2,500 backers on Start Engine. And then then there was nothing I had to do. Once we kind of hit that tipping point, it was wild. I mean, I was watching with my dad. I was like, Dad, we're going to fill this round. And we filled the round 30 days early. And we had 150,000 waiting on the wait list that I couldn't even take because we had oversubscribed the round. So that was great. And when sometimes people Started and has people call me as a reference because I've had such a nice run. Mm-hmm. But I am always honest that that's not everybody's run. Had that Neil Patel thing not happened, it's not the same story. And I probably would have had to start investing in ads like I'm doing now.
Yeah, definitely not everyone's path. I mean, only 7% of issuers last year hit $1 million or more. 50% don't even hit 100K. But it goes back to what you said about listening and listening to your team and listening to industry experts, listening to the surveys and all of the feedback you were getting, and you learned this is what I need to do for an Indiegogo campaign. Yeah. You worked with experts, you did the pre-launch marketing, which many groups don't want to do. Like you said, right. They think they're just going to put up a page. If you build it, they will come. That does not apply to crowdfunding. And you did it successfully. You were getting good conversion rates on the lead forms. It sounds like you spent about $45K to get about 40,000 backers, 40,000 audience members. And that audience, that's valuable. You're still contacting them today, exactly. Rolling out the product. They're going to be right there waiting for you. Sure, some contact info changes, but the majority of them are there and, may even be ambassadors and sharing these future promotions, and sure they have along the way. So you hit 100% of your goal. First day, Indiegogo, you got the go-go factor. They were promoting you across the site. You did $500,000 in sales around that time because of the success and because you were willing to invest and not just invest monetary assets like you said, but really your time, you're calling, you're doing everything you could. You took that same type of mindset into your Start Engine campaign. You were able to do 45,000 day one, and from the existing audience, it's producing more for you. That audience, it's the first question I ask an issuer who wants to go down the crowdfunding route is how large is your audience? And if they don't have one, build it up, same way you did.
Right.
Ran marketing, 150, 175. It was moving, not at the velocity you really wanted, but then you had organic coverage. You
Right.
had a financial publisher, Angels and Entrepreneurs, and with their face, Neil Patel, who's looked at as one of the top marketers in the world, talking about you and oversubscribed, and all because you followed those steps.
Yeah. Jason, it's a good point. I often say that we got lucky with Neil, that he reached out. The way that you just kind of laid out that timeline, he probably doesn't find us if we didn't do the work, launch at 45,000, get momentum. We probably get lost in the crowd. It's a movie example, 417, but there are a million movies on Netflix that you guys are never going to see, right? It just doesn't get found, right? And sadly, that's the case on crowdfunding campaigns too. So I always attribute a little luck to the Neil thing, but you're right. We took the steps to find visibility, right? So that Neil was able to find us.
I like to say positioning for luck. I mean, you put yourself out there. Like you said, you went on your face. They wanted to speak to you. They didn't say, "Hey, what's this product? We're interested in this product." They said, "We want to speak to Ryan."
Yeah.
So I think that really stood out. And you went through some different slower periods, and you were able to optimize. You were able to do that effectively. You were able to manage it to a point where it was working, even with the 150K mark. And you say luck, but outreach to financial publishers, speaking to different groups involved, different groups in your network. I imagine there was some conversations with Start Engine at that point. What do you recommend? What are the best approaches towards optimizations or even pivots if it's not producing the results you'd like right out of the gate?
Yeah. So great question. And very funny. Today, I just did a webinar pitch with Keiretsu, which is another deal flow company in Southern California. They're great. You do have to pay a little bit. And so these are calculated choices. So I think that looking at this Start Engine campaign is very instructive. So because those first two campaigns were kind of blessed. This campaign, luckily with Jason's help, we're doing much better, but has not been as blessed. And there's some, I think, really clear reasons why. Because we got the investment from confidential industry leader, I was still doing a decent job keeping everybody updated in this last 3-4 years, but to candidly admit a mistake, I was so focused on engineering and manufacturing, getting the brush to market, and so excited to do that if I had to go back and give myself a score, I don't give myself the best score on nurturing who was always there for me, which was the crowd. As a matter of fact, the webinar, Jason, that I did with DNA, I spent the first 20 minutes kind of addressing that, right? And because of that, when we went to Start Engine this time, even though we have more followers in Start Engine than we're probably in the top 4% of Start Engines. We now have over 3,500 followers in Start Engine, which you would think is a really great, ingredient to a successful round. Well, we launched, and I talk about humility. I was expecting a much more successful launch, and it was slow. And it didn't take me long to realize that a real part of the reason it was slow is that I had neglected to nurture and appreciate and cherish the people who brought us here, right? Like the crowd had been so great to me, and I was so focused on getting them a brush that I didn't do as great a job keeping them in the loop every step of the way. And as charming as I am from 2019 to 2024, there's some pain there and frustration that I didn't deal with as good as I could. So what that meant was a little bit of a slow launch. And there you have an option of, what am I going to do? Pack up and call it a day, or pivot and optimize, as you said. So the first thing I had to do was really build organic traction. And I wasn't going to do that successfully. I couldn't buy my way into that. As much money as I spend with DNA on ads, I can't buy my way into that. So I had to really be resourceful and go to some of these high net worth individuals that we had been talking about, perhaps in a larger round, some other round, and basically have the candid conversation. Hey, if you guys are interested in investing in RYCA, I need you now. Right. And that's tricky because nobody wants to be first money in, not just because it's like, well, I don't want to be first money in. There's a real practical reason. They don't want to give you 50, 60, 100 grand if it's your only 50, 60, 100 grand, because it's less likely you're going to make it. Right. So there's a collective confidence if, hey, I'm doing 100 grand, but so is 10 other people. RYCA's going to have $1 million. They're going to hit milestones, be able to raise more money. But when to be candid, our page was kind of stalled even under 100 grand. And so it was finding the people, not just the right investors, but the investors that have a deep faith that you're going to pull it off, right? Like, so to be very candid, one investor wrote a 6-figure check, over $200,000. And it took us from kind of a middling 80, 90 grand to 200 to, well, that plus 200 is almost 300. And then I think now we're off and running. We're above 400, and this round's maxed out at 618. And I already know about 100 grand coming on the platform. And so I think we did it, right? Like, I didn't know what the thing was going to be to optimize. And that's when I started reaching out to DNA. It's a little bit of everything all at once. Like, got to work on this, got to work on this. But for me, it was, I need to change the optics of the page. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But the best way to do it was to find someone who believed in me and, I don't want to say saved us, but really, really helped us with that check.
Showed the social proof, the third party validation. And you went out of your way to make those calls.
Oh, horrible,
I say it that way.
Awkward, tough calls.
That's what I'm getting at. And I say it that way because not everyone does. I kind of already exhausted my resources, my network. I don't know, maybe someone comes through. You said, hey, awkward or not, I'm doing this.
Can I say something about that? So, first of all, you can't be an entrepreneur without being willing to do it, but it never makes it easy, and it's never fun. And I can tell you, for me, the reason I'm able to do it, I know that they're doing it. I don't know if it's 51%, 49%. A big reason they're doing it is to help me, right? Some of these people. But I also believe in my heart, them helping me is going to pay off huge for them. And that's where the ability to make the ad, it's not just to bail me out to make my Start Engine page look better. Yes, you're doing me a huge solid, but I cannot wait for that investment to be 5X or 10X or whatever it is. I know my team. I know not just the social proof, but I know the proof we have in the brush. And so it's like, you're doing me this huge favor, and I'm willing to ask for it because I know it's going to pay off for you. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but that's what I believe, and that's my conviction, and that's what enables me to have those tough conversations.
Mm-hmm. I've thought about that before. And for projects I've been a part of, if I don't make this available, if I don't really encourage whoever I'm speaking to invest and be part of this right now, they may be upset with me.
Right. Exactly. In a way,
Down the
you're bringing them
line,
an opportunity. Right.
They hear about a large exit, like, hey, where were you at? Why didn't you let me know I should invest? And
that's funny.
I think that comes through in the conversation as well. If you're afraid to ask them, there's almost something in the background that you're afraid it may not work. Where if you're saying, hey, now is the time. I like the way you said it. I need you now. I know you want to be involved, but I need you now. And here are the reasons that definitely gets through. Any other tips or examples towards scale? You've already gone through so many of them right now, but anything else that you would want to encompass in the roadmap for an entrepreneur to scale?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about crowd and, crowd strategy. If you're lucky enough to get an investment from a huge strategic, which I did, they've invested $7.5 million. So it was a big difference between the Start Engine round and then this investment that came in. Oh, and by the way, just classic business. I was all ready to start my Reg A round at Start Engine. So we had done we'd done the million, and then I was like, this is great. Let's keep it rolling. And we were going to do a $5 million Reg A. And at the time, it was expensive to do that. We did the financial audit and the legal work you have to do. We had invested $60,000 and we're about to launch. The page was redesigned. We were there. And the reason that's important is because that gave me so much leverage. I almost said their name. I almost let the cat out of the bag. But when our partner was like, no, hold on. We're really interested. Okay, well, I'm about to raise money here on Start Engine. And they literally were like, Ryan, please don't. What are you looking for? We'll invest. Well, I was going to raise 5 million. Okay, we'll give you 5 million. It literally happened like that. Okay, well, we'll do 5 million. And so there was just, I know it was the first time I was like, because when you're raising 5 million on Start Engine, you don't know if you're going to get there, but I remember the moment that they said that. I looked at my wife and I was like, I think we just got $5 million of funding, which you can imagine in this path was very exciting. They've since reinvested. And so they're at 7.5 total. But the lesson there was, but not the whole typical have options, but it's very attractive to the community if you're on a path, right? Mm-hmm. Like Start In is great to me. There's value in the crowd. I'm going to continue and go to the next round. And because I had done that, once again, all the prep work that we did, it put me in a perfect position to take on the strategic investor. The part about the strategic investor I was going to talk about for a second too, because it could be overwhelming, right? Like here I am. I did. Of course, we had great lawyers, but I negotiated all the deals, and they were very complicated. We negotiated a joint development agreement which governed how we were going to deal with joint IP. We negotiated a buyout, and we negotiated a licensing deal. All that, not to pat myself on the back, but I was the lead investor, and my lawyers were making sure I wasn't a complete idiot. And my friends would be like, Ryan, how the hell do you know what you're doing? And this room, you could imagine, is Harvard graduates and, all these people. And they're like, Ryan, how the heck do you know what you're doing? And I kind of was like, honestly, if you can produce and direct a movie, you can kind of do anything, because it's the same thing, right? You're trying to get everyone to kind of align on a vision. Like, here's why this is a good idea. Here's why we should all be working towards this vision. And let's not let ego and everything get in the way, and let's make this deal, right? There's a line that I always used to say in filmmaking, like, whatever it takes to get the movie made. And that was kind of the spirit I took to this strategic partnership when things got rocky. Hey guys, we want to make this movie. So, do we need to do this? Can we do that? So that was interesting, that just kind of negotiating those 3 deals with a giant Fortune 500 company when we're our little, and I guess that the little advice there was, nobody thinks they got the best deal ever. It was a pretty freaking awesome deal, obviously, but I was proud that we stayed true to ourselves. Like, we just were ourselves. That's the simplest advice ever, but we didn't get caught up in, we've got to be something that we're not, because the moment you try to do that, it's very transparent and clear to people, right?
So whatever it takes, but being yourself through the process. I like to look at strategic partnership conversations as somewhat of a blank canvas that you're both painting together. And it sounds like that's what you did. You're listening to each thing that needed to take place. You knew where to direct towards and where everyone is playing towards, and we're able to make things happen, but being yourself all the way through, so it's real.
That's right. I mean, this is really letting people behind the curtain, but I basically invented a new way of negotiating the deal, because what they wanted to do was enter into the joint development and co-develop the brush. And then if and when the brush was successful, then we would negotiate what the buyout looked like and all that. And my instinct was like, well, that's messy. We are going to be very intertwined, right? We're essentially going to be married by that point. We're going to have shared IP. So then what does that negotiation look like? Because I can't go anywhere without you, and you can't go anywhere without me. And,
we just have to agree.
So yeah. I said, well, this might sound crazy, but why don't we make an assumption that we're successful? Why don't we make an assumption that this year's co-development deal is going to bear a successful product? And let's make that assumption, and let's today negotiate what the buyout will look like, assuming that we have a successful brush, which was very exciting, but it also took another 3-4 months to do. And that came from I probably did that because I didn't go to business school. Like, that's maybe not the way that you're supposed to do it, but it made sense to me. And then it just gave us such clarity. So that was interesting.
You addressed the variable, the question mark of, what does this buyout actually look like? Why deal with that when we're intertwined and it could be messy? Let's map it out here right now. Of course, there's assumptions involved. This is only occurring if the buyout actually happens.
That's right.
But let's map it all out.
That's right.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Ryan, I feel like I could talk to you all day here. You're very charismatic, and I could feel, they have this hierarchy of needs in psychology and self-actualization. It seems like this is what you're positioned to do, and you're going to see it through all the way to the end. And you've been able to build all these relationships, these partnerships, these backers, these investors because of it.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I'm so happy our paths crossed, and it's been great to meet you. And we on a story for a different time. We have our own journey, that we've crossed and really met eye to eye, and that's why we're sitting here. So really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. More success to come on your capital raise. And we've talked buyout, other things, maybe, years down the line, this conversation could look much different, but we
Yeah.
won't get ahead of ourselves. For everyone who's tuned in, where can they go to learn more, Ryan? And what are some final thoughts you want to leave viewers, listeners with today?
Sure. So, ironically, the shoemaker's kid has no shoes. I'm not pleased with our website, but we do have a website. It's RYCAinc.com. I actually like our landing page. We built the landing page I mentioned, and we still have it up, and that's encompassbrush.com. And I actually think that does a better job capturing our story. I mentioned we're doing a little bit of a bridge round on Start Engine. So, at Start Engine, we're raising now. All you have to do is type in RYCA International. And like I said, there's like 150,000 left on the round, or maybe 170, but I know that round is going to fill soon. As a matter of fact, we just did another deal flow pitch today with Kuritsu. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if people will take, one of the things I love is having conversations with other people in the same boat, right? So I hope I don't regret this, but truly, if anyone is kind of looking for someone to talk shop with, or, hey, I'm thinking about Start Engine, or I'm thinking about blah, blah, blah. You can share my information in my email, and I'm happy to kind of continue those conversations.
Awesome. Awesome. And for everybody who's been in this whole conversation with us, I highly recommend that you do. Ryan's wealth of information, check out RYCA on Start Engine, go to the Encompass site, and don't be bashful. Get in contact. Ryan, thanks again. This has been such an awesome conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, man. Awesome way to spend the afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time. Take care.